I met my first Thai wife in a pub in Marylebone, London, when I'd just started my first job after leaving university. I was 22 years old, money hungry, and in search of a purpose in life that would see me making as much money as I could. If I look back at myself during that time, I suppose my focus was in the wrong place. It was all about me, and I never took a step back to understand that when I was making money, other people were losing money. Yet at the time, it just felt like it was a game, and I was there to win. I worked in an investment bank straight out of university, but this was quite a long time ago now when the rules were different. I started out at the bottom, my intention to work myself all the way to the top, and I didn't plan to let anyone get in my way. I'd only been working there for 6 months, and those trips to the pub were frequent and necessary to maintain my mental well-being. Work hard, play hard. Otherwise, if there's nothing to show for all your hard work, you get burnt out pretty quickly. But that was where I was when I met this girl who I just started talking to, like I'd done many times before. Only this time, the way I looked at her and saw how she was different, she's obviously not from England by the way she looks and talks, yet she doesn't appear to be like lots of other people who aren't from England who seem to be there for the wrong reasons. I found out that she was at university still. She was staying until after finishing, and then it was her idea to go back to Thailand and work for her family's business. I feel like we hit it off straight away, almost immediately, and I was there with a group of mates, but I decided to spend the rest of that evening with her. That's how I met her. One thing leads to the other, the months goes by, she finishes university, she's meant to go back to Thailand, but instead of that, we got married. I don't think her family were too pleased about that, but it was as if they had some grand plan for her that she had to follow. When they found out I earned good money, they were okay to overlook things. This was in the year 1993, and that marriage lasted for 18 years. I thought it was going to last forever, I really did, but years of hard work for me, years of really hard work for her as well, because she had her own career and made her own money. The times we spent together, we were both worn out and tired. We never had any children, and I think that grated on her. We both wanted children and talked about it, but it just never happened. And after 18 years, going our separate way seemed to be the only sensible thing we could do. I can remember getting divorced, and not long after, she was going back to Thailand for good. The divorce didn't really cost me that much money because she made just as much as me. She was a really clever girl, a really hard worker, and she knew exactly what she was doing, and she was smart. So by 2011, that's when I was divorced, it made me take stock on life and the things that I'd spent the previous 2 decades doing. It was trying to make as much money as possible, let's face it, and while I was relatively successful compared to many people, I never really got as high as I planned to. I thought I was going to be a billionaire, and while I was just about a millionaire in terms of dollars, maybe not pounds, I thought continuing to work myself as hard as I was would just get diminishing returns. I seemed to have reached a plateau in life, enough money to retire if I wanted to, no wife anymore, and no direction where I wanted my life to go. And it's when you're in a position like that you do start to think about very, very different things that you could do to have a fresh start. When I got divorced from her, we remained friends and kept in touch from time to time. It was just unnecessary for us to actually fall out. I was quite lucky that she was a reasonable person and we could speak from time to time just to catch up. It was never like we needed a complete clean break and never see each other again. I actually was speaking to her about 3 months after we got divorced, and she was saying how happy she was that she was back in Thailand. That was as far as it went, and I didn't think that, I'm going to go to Thailand. I thought to myself, 2011, I've got decent money. Why don't I just go and travel? A month later, I'd already quit my job, and I was flying down to South Africa. Firstly, it was because I really wanted to go there and see what it was like, but also I was going to look at where some of my family were from. The family on my dad's side used to be from South Africa when they were there, but my dad was born in England when the family decided it would be better to live there than in South Africa. Too much risk and danger that was going on at the time there. That was a long time ago now, and it's just part of our history. But that's why I was going there, and as soon as I got there, I did love it. What came next was a whole year of me just travelling to different places, blowing through a lot of money, but I had money saved, just seeing different parts of the world. One thing that I did wish as soon as I left university was that I should have done that. Looking back, I think it is a good idea to get a perspective on the world before settling into life. Not just for the sake of travelling, but because it does open your mind to the rest of the world. It gives you knowledge that you wouldn't otherwise have, and in turn, I think it would have made me even better at my job. You're not just hearing about things going on in other countries, you've been to those other countries, and when you hear about things going on, you can picture what it was like, and then you can actually work out the severity of things, or you can make some kind of educated guess, as I would like to say. But not only do I think it would have made me better at my job, it would have been all the more better for me mentally. I went all over Africa. I mean, not all over, didn't go to every country, but aside from South Africa, I went to Uganda, Egypt, and Morocco. And I don't know why, but I had this urge to go and visit Sierra Leone. Other than that, I knew it was a dodgy place back then. I do remember listening to one of my colleagues talking about diamonds and how it was coming from there and things that went along with that and some money he made, and yeah, I wanted to go and check it out. It was fun, different, and I'll just leave it at that. I next went to America, even though I had been there a few times before with work. I used to leave the London office for the New York office, and I did it often, although I didn't usually spend more than a week there. I never made it further than New York when I was working, so I headed to California and spent a bit of time in Vegas as well. While I thought it was fun and interesting, and I wouldn't change it, it didn't do as much for me as other countries that I did go to before or later. It just felt like a different version of England in a way, a very different version of England, but you still got the little nuances about life there that in a more developing country as opposed to developed you didn't have. I was more attracted to things that seemed like you were in first. I think that's the best way and the only way you can really describe it. When you go to some countries, it's like you're an open canvas and you can paint your own portrait of it, and that will make sense. When you're in places like America, it's like that canvas has already been painted, and the thought of even going in and making a very slight correction to it will send you to bad places. I spent time in a number of countries in South America. I don't need to go into each of them. I could probably write a whole story about each of the countries I visited, but I would have to say that Chile was my favourite, especially down in Patagonia. After that, it was time to head to Asia. Japan first. I'd been to Japan a few times as well with work, spent 3 months there once, and that was a really great experience, and I felt very fortunate that I was in a position that I had with regards to work. Next, I went to the Philippines, and I can honestly say that the Philippines changed me. It changed me in a way like no other country had before or since, and that was a place that resonated with me within a way that nowhere else had up until then. My time in the Philippines taught me so much. Up until then, all the countries I'd visited had their own unique cultures and customs, and the Philippines was just the same in that sense. But up until then, the countries I'd been to didn't seem to be the same kind of enjoyment factor that the Philippines had. It seemed that the Philippines was purely there for the enjoyment of guys not from there. That's what it felt like at the time, at least to me, and a huge part of the Philippines seems to be there just for people to enjoy themselves. It's probably important to say how much money I had at this time, so it doesn't appear like I'm just blowing through money recklessly travelling the world. I could afford to. When I quit my job, I had about £800,000, and I was happy with that, and I was prepared to spend a couple of £100,000 on this travelling adventure that I was on. Money wasn't an issue. But in the Philippines, money wasn't an issue anyway, even when you had to pay for things because it was so cheap. I found it cheap. I spoke to people there at the time who said the Philippines was quite expensive, complaining that it's more expensive than Thailand, even though in Thailand it's safer, and they had more than they had here. Then I'm thinking back to my wife who was from Thailand, and we spent 18 years together, yet although we spent those years together, we never visited Thailand. We went on many overseas trips all the time, mainly to places in the Bahamas and places like that, yet when we got married, her family came to England. When we were doing things, her family came to visit, and it was never expected that we went to Thailand. But now I'm thinking I needed to go to Thailand as well, because that was one country I wasn't going to go to, because it made me think about my ex-wife. I never thought I would have been so attracted to the Philippines. I was there after Japan, and I did have onward tickets booked to Singapore, and from there, Hong Kong. You still needed to follow these plans. I wanted to go to those countries as well, because I'd never been, but the Philippines stuck with me, and everything I could do there stuck with me. It made me feel like it was there for someone like me. I need to say it like that. I felt that as soon as I got to Manila, and Angeles City was amazing as well, life there was better than life anywhere else. I did plan going to Singapore, which was okay, I suppose, Hong Kong okay, and I had a few weeks left before I was going to return to England and take stock of things and decide what I wanted to do next. After Hong Kong, I thought, well, based on how the Philippines was, and based on what lots of people have talked about there, comparing it to Thailand, I thought I might as well go. I didn't need to mention it to my ex-wife or anything like that I was going to Thailand, but I was going to go to Thailand and it was settled. Flying in from Hong Kong, landing in Bangkok late at night, and making my way to the hotel. I didn't have any feelings about Thailand up until the following morning, because that night I just crashed in the hotel. My hotel was in Silom. That was as far as I got when it came to booking it. I didn't know about the areas. I just spent the first morning, as I did in every other country, walking around and taking it all in. I didn't really get the Philippines versus Thailand comparison straight away, but after doing a little bit more research about where I should go and what I should do, I went on the MRT to Sukhumvit. As soon as I exited onto the street level, I felt that this is the main areas that guys would go to. I walked down to Soy 11 and had something to eat there, and I just took it in that day. Back at my hotel in the late afternoon, deciding it was time to go out, and that's just what I did. I went out to experience if what Thailand had was actually better than what the Philippines had, like so many people claimed. I made my way back on the MRT to Sukhumvit, and that's when I had an amazing night. I mean, it really was an amazing night. I could compare it to how the nights were in the Philippines, but I still wasn't made up which place I preferred the most. If you're going to Thailand or the Philippines, I think both of them have pros and both of them have cons as well. For me, my first impressions of Thailand weren't that much better than the Philippines. The thing I loved in the Philippines was that the people spoke English. Things seemed to be a little bit more rough around the edges, certain things were cheaper in certain situations, and it's not about affordability, and that's one thing that when I spoke to friends back in England about it, they were like, well, we can afford it, so what's the problem if something's more expensive? It wasn't about that at all. When something was cheaper, considerably cheaper than you were used to paying for it, it comes to a certain point or price point where it's so cheap it feels like it's free. It's so incredibly cheap that it might as well be free, and it's the feelings you have like that feel that you're not actually paying for anything anyway because it's so cheap, and therefore you're not paying for it. I think that's the best way to describe it. I found the Philippines cheaper in certain aspects, Thailand in others. The food in the Philippines in terms of the local cuisine wasn't great, but that wasn't great international food everywhere, and that was good. Equally as good as the food anywhere else. Local food in Thailand, I didn't think that was great either, if I'm being honest. Too spicy, and the god-forsaken jasmine rice that would become the bane of my existence. You're not in a country for the food. Then you start seeing videos nowadays on YouTube, people saying you only go to places for the food, and no you don't, as far as I'm concerned. I wasn't in those countries for food. After a few weeks in Thailand, I decided to extend my stay a bit more because I was really liking it. For the first few weeks, I was just in Bangkok. It felt like the city had so much to offer. Everywhere you turned, there was something new and exciting, and Thailand seemed to be booming where the West seemed to be stagnating, and I felt a mix of old world and new. It did seem that the new world was replacing the old at a rapid pace, but it was like Thailand was on the crossroads of then and now, and I was drawn to it and how it made you feel. I left Bangkok and went to Pattaya for the first time. An unbelievable place. I could not have imagined that a place like that could have existed. Everywhere you turned, there was something in your face. And again, it was even cheaper than Bangkok, to the sense that you're going out and doing things and you're not spending any money because it felt so cheap. You weren't worrying about overspending. I did get carried away in Pattaya. But I think that was the first time that I started to look at the girls that I was seeing around me, and I would compare them to my ex-wife, who was from Thailand. I would think that they were both cut from the same cloth, for a lack of a better term. I would look at them like I would look at her before. I didn't separate or differentiate between them. My ex-wife, I should have known, was from an extremely rich family. That's why she could go to university in England. The girls I was seeing in Pattaya didn't have the fortune of birth like she did. Therefore, they were doing things that my ex-wife would have only never dreamed of. But I overlooked that was little differences because Thailand was Thailand, Thai was Thai. Therefore, just because one's like this and one's like that, in essence, deep down they're the same. Whether that was me trying to rationalise with myself the fact that I was in a place that I could see myself staying forever, whether I was trying to just convince myself, I don't know. Probably I was. But I really loved Pattaya and everything about it. At this point, I've been away for a whole year. Spent a lot of money, but I still had a lot of money, so it didn't matter. But that was when I had planned to go home all along. Spend a year away, go back and take stock on things and decide what to do next. I knew I needed to, and I knew I could always come back to Thailand anytime I wanted. I was still at this point in my life, not as yet decided if I preferred Thailand or the Philippines. I knew I liked those countries more than any of the other countries I'd ever visited. I knew I had no desire to go to different countries that I'd never visited before because there was no chance they would match what Thailand or the Philippines had, so there was no point going. Travelling opened my mind to the world and made me realise that lots of countries offer so much more excitement and exhilaration than my own country did. And when I returned home to my flat, well, I was very fortunate to live in a good part of London and that I wasn't poor by any stretch of the imagination. I felt poor in that moment. Not poor in monetary terms, poor in locality terms, because where I lived, I was just surrounded by people similar to me who could do all the same things as me, have the same things as me, and that is often the case. You tend to look up as opposed to look down and be thankful for what you have. I liked Thailand because although I never considered myself rich, what I had went a long way there. The Philippines exactly the same, and that's when I decided it was time to actually do something different. I'd been offered a job at another bank, but I decided against it. I didn't need to continue working, and if I ever needed to in the future, I'd be able to. I'd most definitely caught the travel bug. There's no two ways to say it. I wanted to go travelling again, only this time I only really wanted to go to Thailand and the Philippines, pick a favourite, maybe retire early. I was in my early 40s and I had enough money, or so I thought, and after being back in England for a few months, I made up my mind. I'm leaving England, and there's nothing here for me anymore. It was my plan first to go to the Philippines, stay there for a while and see how it felt to be there longer than a few weeks. Then back to Thailand and repeat. I didn't know if I would be able to choose which one I liked best. Then I was thinking, well, I don't need to spend time in only one. I can spend time in both of them, have a place in each. But I also liked the idea of having a place where I was settled and was in a good position to be because I didn't have to make any decisions as of yet. The next phase of my life is a phase where I changed. In one way, I changed for the better, but another way, I changed for the worse because I just went mad. I went completely mad. Not mentally, just stupidity, because I felt like I didn't need to be in England anymore. All of a sudden, when you're somewhere else, you don't have the thoughts of having to return to England in your mind, and because of that, you're in such a better mental state that you stop and look what you're doing and think, I could do this every day. I suppose that goes back to my job as well. I always took risks, and risks were often rewarded. They weren't rewarded all the time, and when you got it wrong, you lost, but overall you won, and I loved it. The environment, though, was heavy stress, heavy workload, and you only needed, though, to be right half the time, as long as you were right more in terms of how much. I did extremely well. But it was the risks and adrenaline that went along with it that really drew me into that job and that way of life. Take that environment and flip it to a different country where anything goes. If you're not careful, like I was, and you go in search of that risk and adrenaline, it goes there without taking the risk. That's a very real and scary thing if you're not aware of it before you go to start with. I wasn't aware of it in that way. I was just excited to be going and doing different to my friends who still worked at the bank. Long hours every day, stress and pressure. I didn't need that. I had enough money, or so I thought, to do what I wanted when I wanted without holding back. Perhaps it was the fact that I felt power in that aspect, I don't know. I still dwell on it today, as I often do, but I don't know what the best thing to say is. Perhaps I'm just trying to come up with excuses. I don't know, I really don't. Arriving in the Philippines that time with no plans apart from to stay as long as I was allowed before I needed to either extend or leave and return, I was going in with no plans apart from to enjoy myself. I've listened to stories, I've read stories, and I've read about many people's experiences, and sometimes you might be reading the comments, people saying that they would never do things like that. They would never ever dream of going into a bar in Angeles City, for example. And I didn't think I would be someone like that as well. I know I was ever since I went the first time, but I didn't know how much I would love it. Starting out in Manila, a really nice hotel in BGC, and every night I would go to different parts of the city to check out the nightlife. I don't know why I was drawn to places that seemed so run down and rough around the edges. I was drawn to places like that because it felt like it was an experience in of itself. I don't know if it was because I got a huge rush from going to places that were so cheap, and I'm just trying to think of the best word to describe it here. It's so in your face. I just loved places like that. If I told my friends I went there, they'd look at me like they didn't want to know me anymore. But I didn't care. I was having a good time, and there was nothing else that mattered. There were some great places around Ermita, and while many of the guys I spoke to said it used to be a lot better years ago, there were still these grimy little bars dotted around. Malate had a similar feel as well, but Burgos Street was the main place for nightlife in Manila, and I did like it there. That's putting it rather lightly. I loved it there. But I was always thinking back to Thailand and how much different my time was there in terms of how much more in your face it was. I wasn't ready to leave Manila yet, though I had planned to go to Angeles. I guess I was there for 3 months, though, in Manila before I did leave, when I thought now it's time to do something a bit different. In Manila, though, my days and nights were the same. Waking up, going to a nice restaurant in BGC for lunch, hitting the gym for a swim, and then going out for 8 hours and drinking incredibly heavily while having girlfriends along the way. I loved the girls in the Philippines, and I'm getting more drawn into it. It did in a way feel like my old job, the adrenaline you got from it, the risk-taking that went along with it. I loved it, but after a while I knew it was time to move on, so that was why I went to Angeles, to continue. There was something about there that appealed to me as well, and I still struggle to understand why, because it was so run down and dirty. You could smell the rubbish on the street that was just left there and not cleared away. Buildings didn't seem to ever get a lick of paint when they needed them, but that didn't give you any other feelings apart from adrenaline, an adrenaline rush, because it was like that, and I loved it like that. I did a few months there as well, and my life was pretty much like it was in Manila, just repeating every day. I was spending freely, but noticing that I'm not spending that much money really. Everything felt so cheap, and that added to the excitement. And by the time I'd spent a few months there, I was already probably a guy who was dependent on alcohol. I was having difficulty sleeping, and they have those guys that you see around Red Street selling things, and I remember thinking, after I was offered all kinds of stuff, okay, I'll try whatever it was. I'm not going to say it here, so I got whatever it was, and I'm walking back to my place, where I got approached by this policeman. I love the Philippines. I mean, I really love the Philippines, because there I was having a conversation with this policeman as to how much money he would take from me for me to not have any issues. $300. I looked at him like, do you mean 3,000? No, 300. Off you go. Thank you very much. Didn't even confiscate anything as well. What a guy. The question then was, after Angeles City, I knew I needed to move on. I needed to settle down somewhere and not just live out of a suitcase all the time, which I was enjoying, but it gets to you after a while. It was when I was speaking to this American guy, he told me about a place called Subic Bay, which I'd never heard of before, and it wasn't too far from Angeles. He said they had some nightlife there, so I went. Never heard of it, and I didn't know what to expect. But when I got there, it was interesting because you had a small bar street and you had the beaches there as well, and those were great in the Philippines. I just continued with this lifestyle that I was having there, having the best time I'd ever had, but getting more drawn into it and getting more attracted to it in a way that made me not want to extricate myself for it. And it would have been difficult to do that if I wasn't careful. I liked it there, spent a few days there as well, really great fun, and I'm starting to get the urge though that I've been in the Philippines quite a while now. Let's go to Thailand and spend more time there. I should then be able to come to a decision as to where I liked best. I liked the idea of having my own place in BGC in the Philippines, and I thought about my own place in Bangkok in Thailand. I had more than enough money to buy myself a condo in each, and I thought it would be good to have my own base, but I was nowhere near close to coming to a decision like that yet. So from there, I left Subic Bay down to Manila, and I flew Thai Airways business to Bangkok. This was round 2. I'd done the Philippines, and I left, and I could see myself spending the rest of my life there. Now it was Thailand's turn to see if it would offer me better or worse than the Philippines. That's why I'm going to Thailand, thinking I left the airport. It was always my plan to go to a hotel in Bangkok. I hadn't booked one yet. Just go there and pay when you arrive. But when I walked out, I just had this sudden urge come over me, telling me to jump in a taxi and go straight to Pattaya. So what went from me collecting my bag, thinking I was going to be in Bangkok that night, to 10 minutes later being in a taxi to Pattaya, that was a split-second decision. Pattaya is such a wonderful place. It's one of the best places in the world, and immediately I started living like I'd been in the Philippines. I'm noticing little things here and there that I prefer in Thailand, yet things that I miss about the Philippines. There really is no way for me to pick which place I like the best as of yet, and while that wasn't necessarily a problem, I wanted to be settled somewhere, and the idea of being settled in 2 places was starting to not feel appealing. I didn't want to live in a hotel, but I didn't also want to rush it. What I liked about Pattaya more than Angeles City, for example, was that while the underlying idea of the place is the same, in Pattaya it's a lot more open, a lot more in your face, yet it's cleaner and it felt safer at the same time. That was where Thailand can really shock you, if you choose to let it, because one thing that I liked about the Philippines was the places that you went to, in the bars for example, were wonderful places. Yet in the Philippines they were kind of hidden and tolerated. Tolerated openly, but tolerated. And it wasn't like that in Pattaya. It felt like in Pattaya it was an integral and important part of the city, not only tolerated, but accepted and desired. It was as if that's what they wanted it to be like, because it was so open for everyone to see. I liked the bars more as well, because it wasn't a case of having to walk through a curtain that a guy opens for you to go inside. The bars were just there and you could walk in, and you could look into the bars before you chose if you liked it or not, and you could actually look at the girls as well. It was so much easier and open, and that's what I preferred about Thailand, especially Pattaya. There was more things that I liked as well, and it did seem to look like Thailand was the better choice. The thing I loved though about the Philippines, which couldn't be replaced in Thailand, was that although it was more hidden and appeared to be tolerated, you felt different in the sense that it was a bigger thrill because it was cheaper and more raw. I couldn't pick between the two, although everything was pointing towards Thailand as being the better of the 2 options in terms of living, retirement, relationships, everything. Thailand had appeared to be the best, and I just got drawn into Pattaya life for a number of months. I'd probably been there for 3 months in total, already left the country for a better visa, and that was the first time I sat down and started thinking about long term. What do I want for the future? Ever since I did the first travelling, the first idea to quit my job and leave, I'd spent quite a lot of my money. I spent an awful lot of money during that year, and the time in the Philippines and Thailand after, but I still had most of what I had left. I think I probably had around £600,000 left, and I knew exactly what I should do with it. I should have invested it, and I could have worked on other things on the side, but the investment would give me enough income to live on. I didn't know. Maybe I should have gone and done another job and started again doing that. I didn't know what to do for the best. I was, though, just drawn into the life I was living. One thing that I did decide was to take a trip out of Thailand just to clear my head and think about the future more in terms of how can I do this sort of thing forever. I went to Malaysia for the first time, more specifically Penang, and then you find you're falling in love with that place as well. If Penang was exactly like it is right now, don't change anything, but the beer and alcohol prices were as they should be, and you had a load of bars like they had in Pattaya, that's where I'd be, because everything else about it was perfect. I don't know if it's the history that goes along with it around Georgetown. I don't know if it's the influence from different cultures. I don't know what it is, but I really loved it there. And I did get my head back in the game and start thinking about what I was going to do. I'd had so many girlfriends in the Philippines and in Thailand that I knew I didn't want to keep doing that. I wanted just one girlfriend, maybe a wife, and I wanted to get back in to start working again because I hadn't done anything for a while. While I could have probably just eked out an existence for the rest of my life, that didn't sound appealing because I knew what my ability was and I knew how much money I could make. Malaysia got my mind back in the game, in the money-making game, so I planned to go to England, open a few brokerage accounts because that's where I made most money before, although it was for a bank, not myself. I could then visit a few friends and family and then leave back to the Philippines or Thailand. I hadn't decided yet where I was going to go. I probably spent a few months doing that. It was good to see England just as much as to know that I didn't want to be there. I always think it's a good idea to return to your own country, if you've left, just so that you know that you don't want to be there. From time to time, you can find yourself thinking what you miss about England, or I wish I was doing that in England, because the memories you have are often so much better than what it's actually like. Being there and seeing it is enough to make you convince yourself that what you're doing is the right thing. I was back in the Philippines actually not long after. I got everything set up and I was going to start making money again. My performance history was good. I was hoping to make about 8 to 10% a year on my money, and in turn that would be enough to keep me growing my money while at the same time living. I was good at it before, so I thought I'd be good at it again. I spent days reading through company records doing all the work I used to do, but this time I'm doing it at a hotel in Angeles City, and the bars are only a short walk away. And that was even more ammunition for me to work as hard as I could. It became like a game, and I was making money to start with. I was making a few £1,000s a week in Angeles City back in around 2013, and I'm going out trying to spend as much money as I could, doing the most wild and craziest things I could come up with, and I'm still not coming close to spending the money I'm earning, and it feels great. I traded lots of things, gold, Bitcoin, but mainly it was stocks and shares, although I was getting a bit bored of the endless work that went into looking at companies and balance sheets and the performances and things like that. So that's when I took a step back from that and concentrated mainly on gold and Bitcoin because I thought that was something that was going to turn out well. I'm making good money, things are going well, and I was heavily leveraged on a gold trade around April 2013. Way too heavily leveraged because one day I'm doing well and the next day I've lost 200 grand. The biggest loss I'd ever faced, personally, and I knew that things could happen like that. I just got overconfident. I thought I was making so much money, and I was in the moment having such a good time, I wasn't giving it my full attention, I don't think. I was spending everything I was making. And just like that, 200 grand, goodbye. I took a step back. That trade was meant to make me a lot of money. I was expecting the gold to bounce off a support level, but it didn't, and yeah, a very big loss. I lost all my confidence then. Then you think about all the risks you've taken to make money you've made, and then you think, well, was I just lucky most of the time? No, I wasn't. I was good at it, and I did make money, but now I was getting doubts. Perhaps it was because I was getting older. I wasn't as young or reckless in that sense anymore, and I didn't want to lose all my money. But I wasn't getting older and worrying about my extracurricular activities that I loved so much in the Philippines. But I did stop doing any trading for a long time because I became paranoid. And that also made me go down the path of spending more money, even though no more money is coming in. I left Angeles City not long after that dreadful loss, back to Manila, and I just felt a bit jittery, so I went to Thailand. Spent a bit of time in Bangkok and then went to Pattaya, and as soon as I got to Pattaya, I felt a sense of calm come over me, like, okay, take stock of the situation, pull yourself together, one mistake, yes, you've lost a lot of money, but you know that you can make just as much and more again because you're good at it. I started getting back into it, got back all the subscriptions I had for the news things and the services I needed, and everything I got I put back in place, and I was just ready to start finding some more opportunities to make money. The idea to keep upping my savings again was important because I now probably wouldn't have lasted me for the rest of my life with the money I had. With that big loss, I was probably down to around 350 grand in my early 40s, and while I wasn't concerned that I can't make more money, I was concerned that a few bad trades could completely wipe me out. Pattaya was great though, and I loved being there. I loved everything about it there. At this point, I had so many girlfriends that it just didn't do it for me anymore in that sense, so I thought I would need a more permanent girlfriend in order to settle down and to take things easy for a while. I joined a dating site, and that was okay. I didn't mind meeting girls in bars and becoming girlfriends with them. That was only a temporary thing. I didn't want to do that for a serious relationship. I went on a few dates with girls I met on the site, and I'd been in Pattaya for maybe a month or so before I actually met someone. I can skip ahead to say that I did find out eventually that she did work in a bar, but she was just on this site and was one of those things. But I did click with her straight away. Perhaps it was because she lied about everything that she did. She said she worked in a bank, and I thought that was quite amusing because I never mentioned what I did. She talked about what she did, and it sounded so real, and I believed that she worked in a bank. And because of that, I wanted to progress with the relationship in a way that would be beneficial to both of us. I looked at her like my equal. I had money, she worked and had money, and that was the type of relationship I thought would be one that would last. I'd met lots of guys who would get into serious relationships. Many of them get married to girls who worked in bars, and I never understood that was something I would do. It always seemed to be something that you shouldn't really do, and I thought I was clever that I found someone who didn't. Or at least she told me she didn't. I'm still spending freely because that's what I've always done ever since I started working. I always had money, and therefore I could spend what I wanted. And when you get to that place where you need to be careful, you kind of think, well, I've always been able to make money, so it's not a problem. I can continue living like this. But because I found a girlfriend who I was starting to really like, I didn't go out as much anymore. I still went out by myself twice a week or something, meeting up with other friends, but other times I'd go out together with her, and we'd go to completely different places. Before long, I'm not living in a hotel, and I've actually moved into an actual apartment for the first time. Got a really great 3-bedroom unit. It was expensive, I suppose, in terms of what you could have had for a lot less, but I didn't think it was expensive because of how much money I always used to have. That was a good experience, living in a proper place for once, being able to unpack and put things away and buy items that can make the place feel like home, and I start getting back into the idea that I need to make more money. I tried to put to the back of my mind that huge loss I had on gold because I did leave a trade on Bitcoin. I just had a highly leveraged position on Bitcoin from around 2013, and it was only like risking $1,000. The price doubled from there, a lot more than that, and I was very highly leveraged. I was expecting to lose that $1,000, but I actually made $15,000 on that trade. Very lucky, but that gave me confidence because that's what it was always like for me up until then. I thought I could come up with things I wanted to trade on, and then I would do it. I had accounts with the best brokerages because I had the funds that allowed that, so I always had the best prices. Although at the time you couldn't trade Bitcoin that easily, there were some pretty dodgy exchanges that offered leveraged trading, and I went along with them, and it was fine. But many people weren't at the time. I decided, though, to just completely forget about Bitcoin. I didn't want any more to do with it because it was just too volatile and unexplained as far as I was concerned. I decided to just get back into gold because that's where I'd always made most of my money as well. Shares were something I was interested in, but I didn't want to dedicate hours and hours a day to that. It's not that I didn't feel that I needed to. It's just that it felt strenuous and difficult, and I didn't want to have to give that much focus. And gold, I liked it more. Perhaps because everywhere you walked around in Thailand, there were gold shops everywhere, and that made it feel real. Or maybe that's just a bad excuse. So my life in 2014 is great in one sense, because I'm doing something so far removed from what I would have ever expected I would have done. Living in a different country, I'm in a relationship with this girl who is going to work every day at the bank, or so she said. It appears that we have a real relationship and I'm happy with it. And I'm starting to make a bit of money again trading gold. I wasn't doing as many risky trades as I was before, but I will admit that the trades I was doing when I was back in Angeles City were insanely risky, but the payoffs were huge, and I was burning through every thing I made. But the risk was there and I knew it was there. I just thought I'd be okay. Not exactly what a professional trader should say or feel, but when you're in a place like that, surrounded by everything that was going on, you do kind of lose your mind a bit in a way that you wouldn't expect. I'm starting to make more money again, and I'm happy, and because of that, I'm starting to spend freely and go out more evenings. My girlfriend was okay with me going out because she went out with friends as well. And by this point, I felt like I really loved her and was expecting to get married at some point. We weren't there yet, but I was out one night, and she was out one night going out with friends. And I didn't expect that when she said she was going out with friends, she meant friends that still worked in a bar. I thought she meant friends that worked in the bank and they were going to Thai-only places. So I'm walking up Soy 6 thinking about which bar to stop off at, and I see her there, sitting with a load of other girls. I had to go in and approach her and ask her what was going on. She said, "I told you I was going to see my friends." And then I had the painful discussion as to what had really happened. "Why do your friends work here? You work in a bank." And then one of her friends started laughing like she couldn't control herself, and then of course the truth had to come out. She never worked in a bank. She worked in a bar all along. And I thought I was being clever, when in fact I wasn't. I wasn't overly heartbroken, but that was the end of the relationship. Told her to come the following morning and pick up her stuff, which she did. Now I've got no girlfriend. I'm still trying to make extra money, and I'm making money more often than not, which is good. But because I don't have a girlfriend, I'm going out more like I always did. I'm spending heavily, getting drunk, meeting new girlfriends, eating in nice restaurants, and during the daytime, it takes me a few hours to recover from the night before. And then I'm working and making money. But I am starting to take huge risks because I just feel like I was cleverer than everyone else. I wasn't cleverer than everyone else. I mean, I was clever, but I wasn't clever enough to beat the markets all the time like I thought I must have been. It was an addiction to the adrenaline that went along with it, and the adrenaline that went along with everything that you did in Pattaya. That's when I started making bad moves. You might make £1,000, then lose £1,000, then you might make another 1,000, and then lose 10,000, and that was the problem. And before long, you can be a few £100,000 down after a few bad trades, thinking, "Wow, how did I get here?" That's how quickly it can turn. But because I'm getting so drunk every day and living that lifestyle, I'm not working with the right mentality. I'm just gambling at this point, and I will openly admit that. I started gambling, trading, but gambling. Nothing was projected, nothing was planned. It was just, okay, I think best on everything I've ever done, so I know what I'm doing. I was gambling heavily because I wanted to start getting money back as well, and that can never be good. I know it sounds ridiculous, and it is, but that's where my head was at the time, and before long, I had about 10 grand in the bank, and that was it, and I started to panic. That's how quickly you can lose control of your perception of money, your perception of time and reality and everything. You lose control of your ability to control your emotions. Everything is just happening to you, and it's like you're powerless to stop it. I never thought that the nightlife in Thailand or the Philippines would make me someone I wasn't. But here I was, sitting in my nice condo, was about 40,000 baht a month, looking at the computer screen, coming to the understanding that I've lost all my money in a very short space of time. How you handle decisions like this can have ramifications for the rest of your life. What did I do? I ran through the rest of my money over a few months because I was in fight or flight mode. I wanted to escape from the situation that I put myself in through sheer stupidity and negligence, but it doesn't work like that. And before long, I don't have any money at all, and that's how quickly you can turn around. Nothing left. Not understanding what to do. But then coming to the understanding that I needed to go back to England and get another job. It was starting to dawn on me that I needed to do that. And while I knew I would be able to get a job, I'd have to secretly hide these stupid mistakes I'd made because that wouldn't come across as very good. But in the meantime, how was I even going to get there? I called a friend and said, "Can I have some money for a plane ticket?" And he sent it for me, a good friend. And when I'm boarding the plane and I turn left and they look at my ticket and say, "No, that's the wrong way, you've got to turn right." I'd never flown economy before because I'd had enough money not to. And then I'm sitting in these seats in between two people thinking, how did I get here? If I didn't gamble away what I had, I could have probably made it work. But Thailand and the Philippines made me someone I wasn't, and I was going back home. I needed to start again. Arriving in London and walking out of the airport, I knew I could call my friend and be able to stay with him, but that felt like I would be admitting defeat completely. I didn't want to be defeated. I didn't want to be the guy who had it all and who lost it all in such a short space of time. So I will even say, even though it's embarrassing, that I spent a few nights on the street not knowing what to do. It was only after I did that for 3 nights that I think, hang on, I better call a friend and explain what had happened. 10 minutes later, he pulled up in a car and said, "Get in." A really good friend, and I'm back at his place, and he put me up in his spare room. I had a shower, made myself look more presentable, and I start thinking about, I need to get another job, put my life back in order. Just over 10 years have passed since then, and I am back on my feet. I've got all my money back and then some, and I look back at that point in my life with a sort of happiness. Now it's all behind me. It made me appreciate things so much more than I ever used to. I never appreciated money because it came so easily when I was working. I spent it so easily because it came in so easily. And when I was in Thailand and the Philippines, I was addicted to the feeling that I was getting things for free because I'd always paid for things. Paying for things and having a good time is one thing. A fancy bottle of champagne in a club that you might spend £1,000 on. That's one feeling. But paying for something in a bar in Thailand and it's so cheap it feels like it's free, that's a unique feeling altogether. And I was throwing money around left, right and centre. But most stupidly, I was gambling instead of trading because I was just in the wrong frame of mind. The reason I think this story is worth sharing is because Thailand and the Philippines can change people, and they do change people and make them do things that they wouldn't do under any normal circumstances. They made me look at my own country as a dull place that I didn't want to ever return to. They made me look at my old job as if what's the point when things here are so much cheaper and I can work for myself. And they made me chase my losses because I wanted in that moment more than anything to be there and stay there at all costs. I'm still disappointed in the sense that I could have done things so much better, and taking what I had invested and lived very well. But that's what I'm doing today. It was a life lesson and I look back on and smile, although I do shudder when I think about how I actually felt when I realised what I'd done. The Philippines, but more specifically Thailand, because Thailand is better, is a place where your wildest dreams can come true. Yet they can also make you do things that you wouldn't do in any other situation. And when I go back to Thailand and the Philippines, which I do regularly, at least twice a year for the past few years since COVID, I go with a separation in my mind. I know what I can do there, yet I know that it's only available there, and you've got to understand that it's temporary and it's not there forever. You go there and think, this is Thailand, this is your Thailand budget, and that's it. Enjoy it and go. Anything more than that for people like me was a recipe for disaster, and it was a disaster, a huge disaster. But I'm thankful to be where I am today, and I owe Thailand so much for making me grow up as a person, although it was late in my life, in my 40s, but it was making me take that step back, taking myself all the way down to zero to actually have a feeling of what it was like. But it gave me more energy to go and start again and make a success for the second time, and that's where I am, and that's my story. Thailand will always be my favourite place in the world, and I'm actually going to be there in October. Don't know for how long I'll stay, but I could stay as long as I like, and I can't wait.